and dear friend Lynette, and we're going to talk to you about some of the ways that we're going to be discussing loving ourselves during the program. The program is actually going to be one of the longest of the ones that we've been teaching so far, and I'm looking forward to them getting longer and longer, to be honest. I really love the notion of long joinings programs rather than just 2 weeks or a month. So this one's going to be 12 weeks altogether. Hello, my love.
Hello, love. How are you?
We did that okay, much more quick this time.
That
Better.
was smashing. Look at us. We're experts at this.
It's so nice, isn't it, to be able to do this? I was just saying to everyone, meeting again for the third session to talk about the new program that we're going to be running starting at the beginning of October, that you and Kirsty and I will be co-teaching together.
Mm-hmm.
Requiring quite a commitment from people because, you know, our workshops have traditionally only been 4 weeks long and this one's 12 weeks. And when we talk about it, we talk about how exciting that is for all of us, isn't it? Really getting our teeth into something.
It is. It is. So often at the end of the 1 month offerings, so often people are like, oh, but we want this to last longer. Or is there a way we can create a Facebook group and stay together like this? So it's just a lovely way to extend and deepen the time together. I'm so excited.
Do you have to laugh? Can I say this to everyone listening? That whilst we were having one of our planning meetings the other day, we slipped into planning the workshop that we're going to be teaching when we finished this one, didn't we? Wasn't that fun?
We did. We did. Oh my gosh, that one's going to be fab too. We'll tell you all about that when it's time.
I quite like the fact that we never really keep still. And I love that what we're doing all the time is listening to people in our community, what they're asking for, what they're needing. So this is where this workshop arrived from. I said at the intro when I first talked about it, that would be the question I believe I'm asked more than any other. How can I truly love myself? And I always reply with, well, let's talk about why you don't. So the first workshop, the first live session we did, I spoke about that a bit. And then last week, you and I talked about the whole notion of resilience. Mm-hmm. So tonight, I thought it would be quite fun if we talked about the next piece that's going to be part of the workshop and that you might ask some questions to me.
Yes. Oh, this part is so lovely. And this is also something we're asked a lot about, is just our deepest longings. Like, people are always sharing and pondering about their deepest longings. So in your experience, what are our deepest longings? What are people longing for?
Well, the answer to me just simply arrives instantly. Love. To know that I'm loved, to be able to give and receive love, to share love, to know that love is true, to know that it will go on, that it won't end, to know that even if it does end, I will still be loved. I just always think about it as, it's like food. We need to know that we are loved in the deepest, most intimate fashion, starting from when we're little newborns. What would you have answered? What are people's deepest longings?
I think the longings come in a lot of different packages. People long for different things. But when you take away, like your Russian nesting doll, that gorgeous doll, when you showed us our part, when you take away all of the things, the actual things that they're longing for, and come to the essence, what we're all longing for is, I want to be loved and I want to love. And yeah. So if this is something that is so universal, and the minute I asked the question, we both went to, oh, it's love. We all want to know that we sit securely in love. what keeps us from that? Why do we not feel loved, or why are we incapable of loving, or why do we think that we're not loved? What's in between us and all this love we long for?
Pain of actually not having it in the way that we felt we needed it. I think I'm always surprised at how many people will say, I'm happy, I really loved my childhood, I loved my parents, I've got great friends, I love my partner. And equally as many people say, well, I don't know what that is, Helen. And when commonly I ask this question: when you were growing up, who really loved you? Have you ever experienced unconditional love? Do you know, can you explain to me what that felt like, how you received it? And I watch some people's face just drop into this wonderful, dreamy, oh yes, and they want to share this lovely story. And other people say, what do you mean? Like, I don't understand what you mean. I think it's really polarized, and then it fits into all the areas in between as well. So I'd like to ask, how do you know that you've loved? What's your experience of giving and receiving? Who loved you? And how do we know that? Because someone somewhere in most people's lives have shown them what love is.
Yeah.
That would be one of my deepest longings, that by the time I get to the end of my life, I will have been able to show people what love is. I want to write about it, teach about it, and tell about it. And I want to say it. Love, for me, is not a horizontal connection, but a vertical one.
Oh, well, having been loved by you and currently loved by you and watching you love so many other people, I think this is your most precious gift. Most precious gift. And when we talk about the horizontal love, which I think is a lot, when you said that, I immediately thought a lot of the ways we fill our longings horizontally, kind of surface things, right? Sometimes money, sometimes food. But when we talk about that vertical, that deeper, what does that look like? What does that look like for people who sit on your couch and say, I don't know what you're talking about, Helen. I can't think of a time I was loved unconditionally.
I think it's that the realization that that's actually the essence of who we truly are. And that being able to help someone connect back again or remember that that's who they really are, to me would be my greatest joy. I feel like that's what my life has helped me to want to share and to know, both for myself and for other people. And there have been times I've failed at it dismally. But what's interesting me, what always has kept me helping people to really connect with their deepest longing, is being able to name it, to be able to say, inside each one of us is the part of us that we either know in our deepest knowingness, or we are yet to meet from an adult perspective, but we knew it when we were children.
Yes.
Wholeness. Home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were born just ready to connect and love and be loved and just swim in the unconditionalness of that gorgeous depth.
So it's interesting, isn't it, that our deepest longings actually somehow or other create our deepest disconnections too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they do. They do. I can't remember who said this, and it wasn't me, but I've quoted it a lot, is that we really are kind of wounded in the vessel of relationship. And often our wounds come when we feel very isolated. So we're wounded in relationship, but we feel very isolated. And yet our healing happens in community, like the Mindful Me community, like in friendships and marriages, often having children. You know, that's where we find our way back and remember who it was we were prior to forgetting that is who we are. Love.
So to me, I quite like simple things. Open, closed. So we began open and willing participants in our own life, just calling in love, calling in love, wanting to nestle up against the place where we felt the safest and to be held there. So either that happened for us in a way that we know is true, and we were able to join with that and keep our hearts open, even when we were wounded, hurt, ignored, betrayed, rejected. We at times have still managed to stay connected to that open piece inside of us. And for others, it's been the protection of closing to keep ourselves safe, because wounded love hurts more powerfully than anything you can possibly imagine.
It does. It does.
So therefore we disconnect ourselves, don't we, from
Mm-hmm.
the very availability of love by somehow or other turning it into a story about what's wrong with us so that we can't be loved as a protection. So I still think that for all of us, our deepest longing is that we might know that we are connected, that we are held, that we are safe, that we are wanted, that we belong, that we matter. And yet so many people that I talk with have locked themselves away from that, the fear of allowing it. So I remember someone saying to me years and years and years ago, you know, Helen, love is about the most dangerous thing there is on the planet. What do you think of that?
I was just going to ask you that. So when you hear that, when you heard this person say that, what arose? What did you think?
It immediately helps me to see I must listen acutely to the story that informs all of that. And at the same time, it's my job to keep my heart so open that one would hope I end up having a relationship with this person from a therapeutic perspective that helps them to feel someone sees you. You are seen by someone. So why is love dangerous? Because it hurts us. And it hurts us in exactly the same way as falling and breaking a bone. When our heart's broken and hurt, it hurts us in the same way. And it feels dangerous to actually have the courage to open again. Doesn't it?
It does. It does. I think too, when we looking at it from an attachment perspective, when we feel unloved, whether it's true or not, when we're small, when we're really young, when we feel unloved, you're right, it's deadly. It's the most dangerous thing in the world not to be loved when you're small, when you're little, and you're so reliant. And we carry that into our adulthood, those protections, those ways that we salvaged our little broken hearts. So as adults who maybe aren't aware they're doing that, what are some ways we do that as adults? What are some ways that we still carry those protections?
Well, the closeness, I think. You know, it's just our defenses, really, isn't it? Protecting the wounds inside of us. I think I talk often to people who constantly refer back, even as adults, to how they learned to respond to a parent or parents or someone who hurt them when they were young. So they might often say, well, when I was around my mum and she was the one that felt dangerous, I had to, or my sister was a real bully, or my brother frightened me and I had to always escape from him, or I felt uncomfortable around an uncle, or, you know, but we're talking about safe people in a house when you think about it. And listening to people say, I never felt safe. So because I learned not to feel safe as a child, I bring that with me to adulthood. And that's the lens through which I see love. It's dangerous. It's not safe. It hurts. It could be taken away. Best not really connect with it. However, I'm so lonely.
Yeah. So when we, and I hear myself in everything that you're saying. I recognize, I can pick them out. Um, so as an adult now, that we've had these defenses, these ways of closing to protect ourselves. How do we start allowing in? Like what are the first things someone can do once they recognize it, once they say, "Oh, I did that when my mom did this." Then what? Then
I
what?
think
How can we
I think the most wonderful thing about that is you can trust yourself. The defenses work for such a long period of time, and then one day they cease to be so effective. And we begin to think something I'm doing just doesn't feel, I think there must be more. Or I watch someone or see something, or by chance read something, or I notice something in a movie, or I watch and I suddenly think, oh, maybe I could have that. Maybe that's available for me. And we start looking for it. So I always want to say, when people say to me, thank you for helping me find myself because you did it, I'd say, you know what? I never even knew you existed. You brought yourself to come and talk about this. Your soul chose wanting to know and to be known and to be loved because that's part of our innate wholeness. It longs for itself. So our deepest longing is actually self-propelled, self-motivated, and self-arrives. I never get to talk to people who don't want to be here, really.
Yeah.
They often will say to me, I didn't want to come and talk to you. I don't want to take part in this. I don't want to be here. And I say with love, I wonder why you are then. Because I didn't ring you up and ask you to come. I didn't even know you existed. So people's can trust your own heart. It brings you exactly when you need to whatever early steps you first need. And it literally could be a book that you find, or someone's kind eye, or a piece of kindness that someone shows you that momentarily reminds you of your own inherent goodness. And then you start to wake up. You can trust yourself.
Isn't that gorgeous? Yeah.
It's
Because
all
you
so
trust.
much bigger than we are. That's how I feel about it.
Mhm.
We forget that there's so much beyond what's around and just happening, that we end up being propelled into job situations or partner situations or things that push us, make us take a path, detour from a path, but all the time it's our own deepest longing, which is the most wonderful part of ourselves, driving us to reach for love, because that's our nature, bringing
So
us.
bringing us home.
Yeah.
So is it our own stories that we've created that keep us away from our own home, bringing us home?
Well, the stories are true. A lot of them are part of the way we interpreted what happened. Could be any odd sort of happening in our childhood, something that happens at school, things that wound us, sometimes at 10-minute intervals when you think about it. I remember really clearly standing in the kitchen waiting for my mum to turn towards me. She was cooking and she felt really distracted. And I wanted her to turn and say to me, well, you don't look very happy, love. What are you needing? Or do you want to talk with me about something? But she was very distracted this day and I could feel it in her. And she turned suddenly and said, not interested in that tone of voice on your face. You take yourself away and when you feel better, come back again. I imagine actually that she was really tired. I know looking back on it, it was a very stressful time in her life, and I probably was about 8 or 9. But I remember what it felt like still, because that day I had been hurt really badly at school by a whole group of kids, and I created it. I really was showing off. I was boasting, saying that I was better at something than someone else. And so they taunted me and hurt me and pushed me down. And I wanted to have a conversation about why I was trying to say something which I thought was positive, and it was misinterpreted, and everyone was awful to me, and now I'm too scared to go to school, and I need you to comfort me. And my mum just dismissed me and said, go away. I never spoke to her about it. But you know, in the year or so before she died, and we could go back and talk about all of these things, I remember when I was about 14 and telling her, and she said, oh my love, that would have happened 100 times. It would have happened 100 times. You know, I would have just been busy.
Yeah.
Was it love or unlove? Now, can you imagine that things like that happen to people 1,000 times worse when they are really badly? And I explain that as a little wounding, and it's nothing. And still, the core of us tries to bring us home into wholeness from terrible, threatening situations, horrible abuses, lots of lack. Still, we can trust ourselves that our innate wholeness, a human part of us, calls us towards love, because that's our highest calling.
And like when we think of the longing too, it all matters. It all matters. You know, we don't have to get into those weird comparisons. Well, I have nothing to complain about. I had running water in a house. And what matters is the felt sense of it, right? And meeting that now. Because we've all endured some things, maybe 1,000 times, maybe 4, maybe 1. Yeah. The part that I find so lovely is that in the longing is actually our attachment system signaling that it's still intact, that it's still doing its one glorious job on earth, which is to connect us, to keep us connected with one another.
And so ourselves. And ourselves.
Yeah, all ourselves, our experience, our own heart, and with other people. Yeah. And when sometimes we shame ourselves, we have a little judgment around that longing, you know, oh, you shouldn't do that, or you know, you're such a child, or whatever judgments. We all can judge ourselves, but really it's just this glorious signal that we're intact, that our entire system of wanting to be connected with our own heart and connected in community is working. It's working. So how do we meet our longings? How do we show up for ourselves?
Isn't it a wonderful thought? How can I truly meet myself? I think that the interesting thing about it is when you're wanting, when you're ready to, the teacher always appears in whatever form, whether it's through a new job or a new acquaintanceship with someone. But somehow or other, life makes us go towards fullness and healing all the time. The timing doesn't matter. The age doesn't matter. I had a wonderful session many years ago with a man who was 72 who said, I've just retired and I'm about to learn to connect with myself now. And I thought, yes, it doesn't matter whether you're young or whether you're old. That trusting that deep inside of us, we will be led to the right place in the right time, simply by our own longing. So instead of putting it outside of us and saying, someone else has to do this, I'll have to find the person, I think the first thing is the realization that it's actually part of our humanness, that we need connection more than anything else. And we're driven to keep searching and looking for it. So we can trust ourselves. I think I say that to people more than you can possibly imagine. Let's begin having a conversation about how you can recognize you can trust yourself, no matter how bad things are. That everything you long for is deep within you. It's not out there, and it's not in other people. It's maybe finding someone to help you open up and first connect with yourself. And then I can think, I say this a lot too, I've got 50 different ways you can do that. Let's have a conversation and see which one of these will work for you. Baby steps.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's about consciousness. It's about awareness. It's about waking up. And intriguingly, I think that we're running this program now because of all the external circumstances that have helped people to wake up in ways that they may not have before. I'm fascinated by how many people have spoken with me over these months when we've been locked down or separated, or our lives have been different. We're not able to fly away or meet with our families in the way we normally would have. How they tell me they've begun to wake up to how they see and about self-reflection, that they may have had conversations with people that have opened up something inside of them they never dreamed was there. And it fascinates me that part of the reaction to the whole COVID situation has been, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
How am I? Why am I? Isn't that amazing, don't you think?
It's so amazing. It's so amazing. Well, it slowed us down in a lot of ways, especially here in Dubai. You know, um, people leave in droves in the summer, they leave in droves over winter break, and having to be still and be still in our pods of humans if we have families, or be still in our apartments and not have access to a lot of the pods of humans we usually do. Yeah, it's created a lot of space and a lot of time to for things to bubble up, you know,
Mm.
to come, like you said, from kind of that vertical space. Yeah.
It's interesting what's bubbled, because I've said this many times now that I have a sense that that's really polarized. The glorious paradox is love can bring us home in the same way that fear can as well. Anxiety can bring us to ourselves in the same way that a warmth can. It doesn't seem to matter which way it goes. So some people have discovered a great vast opening inside of themselves sitting in this space, and a willingness to dig deeper inside of themselves, whereas others have found piles, great amounts of fear and anxiety, of old wounds and hurts and rejections. And that's what's brought them to come and ask, how can I, what's happening to me? So I'm a great respecter of it. I'm a great respecter of addiction, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I think addictions for me show us that we know that there is more, and a way of soothing, for instance. And
Absolutely.
in the lockdown, that's been true. Meeting people who've grown suddenly aware of their huge addiction to whatever it is they used to numb themselves with, because of this space. Have you noticed that too? You've been familiar with people around that as well?
I have. I have. And I've noticed it a little in myself as well. A little in myself, the busyness or, yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, both the fear and the anxiety and just kind of the more delightful ways of coming home to ourselves are available. And really, for me, I just think, oh, whenever I meet myself, I meet all of me, my attachment system, my longings, my yearnings, a little bit of shame, a little bit of judgment, all of it, all of it, you know, and including the ways I try and avoid feeling any of those things, the distractions, the disassociations. Yeah, yeah, I've noticed that.
So all people are the same, aren't they? Everywhere.
Ah, it's very true. It's very true. It's again the last nesting doll may look very, very different, and the next nesting doll may look very, very different, but the deeper we go, we truly are the same. We're just connected by our hearts. We really are.
And when you think about it, when we talk about our hearts, I think that's really interesting. Have a conversation with someone who lives very much in their head,
Yeah.
analyzing, thinking, plotting, planning, working things out, and to help them to drop into a place inside of themselves where they feel their heart. Because, of course, this to me is the wholeness about mindfulness, recognizing that most of us have totally disconnected from the neck down, and we live up here in our thinking mind all the time. And we talk about deepest longings, you immediately go down. So deepest longings are deep inside of us. Mm-hmm. And they're never anything like, I wish I had a new car or a bigger house or some more clothes. I laugh about it and think, how many people have told me they've gone finally out shopping again and thought, well, I know perfectly well I don't need another handbag or new shoes or another top because I haven't worn anything different for the last few months, you know, haven't used a handbag, haven't worn any shoes. Mm-hmm. We don't need things. It's not things that ever fulfill the deepest longing, ever, is it? It's that search for depth inside of ourselves. It's the pushing down into how we numb, why we numb, and the recognition that in the space, in the more stillness, in the ability not to have so much busyness, that all of these things start to arrive. So for some people they are frightening, and for others it's the beginning of, oh, yeah, I can experience myself.
Yes.
Yeah. And all of it goes back to the word connection, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
In the workshop, we're going to do a fair amount about meeting our deepest longings and why we struggle with them and how to hear them and how to understand what they are and how to connect with ourselves and with each other. I'm really looking forward to that part. And understanding that one of the greatest coverings of all is coming to grips with shame.
Yes.
Which is the name for the numbing.
Yeah. And realizing that we can move back towards ourselves in such a titrated way that we can meet ourselves with deep compassion and kindness instead of the, you know, we kind of live in a society that likes to do things very quickly, very swiftly, very, you know, and here in Dubai, we're fantastic at it. We can build a building in a week, whole high rise, you know, but we can find our way back to our heart in such a titrated, it's hard, deep work, but we can do it with great love and equanimity for ourselves.
Well, that's another learning piece though, isn't it? Yeah. Because that's another thing that people often say to me. How long is it going to take, Helen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, you know, will I be done with this? Will I have met myself and done with it and be on living happily? Yeah. I think actually, here's another piece about love I think is really important. The constant search for happiness means that we don't find the love we're looking for. Because in actual fact, we need to be searching for the deepest joy. Love is not about happiness. Sometimes in the middle of love, there's an extreme opening into the depth of sadness and loss as well. So the search for happiness means that often we bypass or overlook or underestimate. In actual fact, my deepest longing is that I might really, really, really fully live, and be able to accommodate all of the hurts and the pains and the losses and the wounds in a way that I learn how to hold a space for them. And that I could actually help other people do the same thing, find that place for themselves where they're not so frightened. And of course, to do this, well, you have to do it with baby steps and recognize that this is our life's journey and it's a lifelong growth. It's not we build a high rise in a week and we'll fix your life up and by the end of the workshop you'll be grand. No, it's about learning how to live with awareness.
Yes.
How to be conscious and aware, not happy, conscious.
Yeah. And it's a lifelong commitment to yourself. It's this life, you're rebuilding the relationship with yourself that was fractured for a million different reasons, that the disconnect. And once we reconnect, we re-meet ourselves over and over again, which when you mentioned us, we got excited about the next workshop and we got a little distracted talking about this one. It's because once you realize that there's always a new delicious thing to tend to and a new heartbreak to hold, and we re-meet ourselves. It's all a spiral. You know, we think, oh, I've tended to that grief, but it may come back around. And but as you're spiraling, you're making a deeper space to hold all of it. And so yeah, there's no 7-week plan. There's no workshop that it's going to be like done and dusted. Thank you. I have my certificate. It's really just finding, re-meeting yourself with compassion and kindness, which really are the antidote to so much. Because we live in kind of a brutal world. It's a very brutal world, and we learn how to be brutal with ourselves, and we call that, you know, self-will and well managed. But really, it's just another way we wound ourselves. And so, yeah, it's baby steps.
Yeah. It interests me that as a girl, when I was asking my mum, how will my life be if you die now? How will I be? Because she asked me to talk with her about that. I remember saying to her, so will I be sad for a long time until I get over it? And she really lightly said, my love, you can't ever get over the grief. Because you see, grief is all about love. You can't ever, we love each other. You can't ever stop loving. So you, in many ways, one day the grief sort of turns into love and you realize, but it still all sits in there going round with each other. And once I began to understand what she meant by that, I began to see that large lots of hurt inside of us are what carve out the holding space within us, so that throughout our lifetime we become more spacious, more open to being able to have even deeper longings. Yes. So I think that's a really interesting point, and I notice that now because I'm older, that where once I would have felt full, I had no idea that that was just the empty start of the beginning of opening. There's so much more, and the ability to hold greater and greater space and not to be frightened by our deepest longings, to learn how to sit with the understanding and the knowledge that kindness and love is encapsulated in compassion. That's what we're going to talk about next week. Yes. So when we do next week's Monday Night Live at 7, you can get to watch why next time Kirsty and I will talk with each other, and Kirsty is going to talk with us about how to live understanding compassion for ourselves, how to live with opening to what that actually really means. Someone asked me recently, isn't that a new word? Compassion? It's another word for kindness, I said, but as it operates back towards yourself when you think about it. Yeah. My husband used to say compassion actually means love in action. I like that version.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to finish, I think, now. And we're going to understand that the workshop that we are running is going to be October, November through December into January, and that the places would need to actually ask Alfie and Info at Mindful Me about it. The realization that we will talk about this next Monday night, and that people who want to have these kind of conversations with us and with our larger group can have them every second Sunday night when we meet together on Zoom and have what's called mindful living, a 2-hour conversation, which is such fun, is it not?
I so look forward to it. Sometimes I wish it was every week. I know that's too much, but sometimes I just, the conversations are so luscious, I don't want to wait another week before we can meet again.
Yes, it's every 2 weeks is an interesting piece. But I just want to remind people how fun it is, and how everyone is welcome. And as Kirsty's just putting on the screen now, the
Mhm.
telephone number for Alfie, who does all our bookings, thank you, Alfie, and the info@mindfulme.me, which is the email way of also getting in touch with us. That would be really good. We welcome all those inquiries. We're here, mindful me, because mindful me means mindful us, mindful we, mindful you. It just means let's connect, doesn't it?
Yes. Oh.
Thank you, Lynette.
Oh, this has been gorgeous.
It's very nice actually seeing your face. I'm so looking forward to the day when we can actually meet in person.
I know. Soon, inshallah. Soon. We will be together soon.
Lots of love. Thank you for coming on tonight and having this lovely conversation about our deepest longings.
Thank you. And thank everyone for joining us. This has just been lovely. And we so hope to see you in a workshop or every other Sunday. That would be gorgeous. Thanks so
Lovely.
much.
Lots of love.